agenda for the next few teachers. So I thought what's been useful for me, how you map out the idea, how you map out the big idea. So if you've got an idea for a book, send me some likes. And what are you going to do with that idea? What is that idea? Because, you know, I've always got ideas. I woke up this morning, 5:15, as I often do, ideas. And very often that's, you know, those ideas are really the nuggets of my blog posts. But what about enough content to write a book about, you know, and to write a book about something when you're talking about 80,000 words, not all books are 80,000 words, but, you know, if you're working with a publisher, it's very likely they're going to want in the region of 60 to 80,000 words. What are your 60 to 80,000 words going to be about? What is that idea? So the idea has to have longevity. It has to have stamina in as much as, you know, the loquacious stamina. You have to be able to find those words that are going to support the book. So for me, in the first book, it was really simple. I was doing a lot of training, a lot of teaching, a lot of coaching, a lot of consulting around social media and the practicalities of businesses and people using social media. I blogged weekly about social media. When people spoke to me, I would talk to them and advise them about what they could be doing with social media. So therefore, the content for my first book was very much living within the very heart and soul of what I was doing. Everything that I did, most of the work that I engaged in, focused on the topics that became then my book. And so for you, that's the first thing I would ask you to really drill into. What is it? What is it that you do? And what is it that you do that, you know, people have said to you, you know what, you should write a book about this. You should be helping people with this. It's that really is going to ignite the big idea. Because without the big idea, you know, I previously have wanted to write a book for a number of years, but I never really knew what that book was going to be about. And then when I did write The Business of Being Social, it was very organic. It was just a natural progression of what I was doing in my day-to-day life. And because of that, it flowed very, very beautifully. In as much as it wasn't a real struggle. I didn't really get writer's block because most of the work had been done. A lot of the thinking, a lot of the planning, a lot of the exercises, a lot of the case studies, this was all real stuff that was happening in my world. And what I was going to do now was just curate that together and talk about it in a book. So that's what I would say to you. What is that idea? What is it that you're doing? And how does that translate into a book? Now, of course, the book you're thinking of writing may not be a non-fiction book. It may be a fiction book. And again, I would invite that same question. What is it that is you're really curious about? What is it that you see, watch, do, feel that you could use to manifest this story that is going to keep moving into the book? So books, the big idea usually comes from our own experiences, from something we're hugely passionate about, or perhaps we're inspired by somebody else and we think, you know what, that was really interesting. I think I could do something like that, but maybe do it better or a little bit differently. So getting the big idea. Then once you've got the big idea, it's about how you actually map that out. So most books are usually, non-fiction books are usually about 8 to 10, maybe 8 to 12 chapters long. So the way I do this, and it's a way that I mapped out the first book, I mapped out the second book, is, and indeed this third book, is that I create a mind map. And I'm not, you know, I have read many, many years ago Tony Buzan's mind mapping book, and that's a brilliant reference, and you'll find lots of references to mind maps on the internet. But for me, I say mind map, mine's more kind of like a many-legged spider. And it looks a little bit like this. So in here I have my big idea. What is the concept? What is it that I am curious about or keen to share? What does that look like? So for the business of being social, it was about social media strategy and tactics for any business, okay? How to practically utilize the channels for any business. With the next book, the book I'm currently writing, and I'm almost there with it, it's called Get Social. That book is about strategy and tactics for leaders. So this is about, for, you know, if they're in a leadership position and maybe their organisation is or isn't engaged in social media, probably is engaged in social media nowadays, but maybe they're not. Maybe sometimes they're too afraid to be part of it, but perhaps because they're at such a leadership position, they are concerned that what if I get it wrong? I don't have time for social media. So all of those aspects give me the resource and the ideas for, well, okay, these are real challenges. What these are problems, these are challenges, and what my book is going to offer is a solution to those challenges. So that big idea isn't just about, well, this is what I know and this is what I do. That big idea is seeded around the problems that you are solving for your audience. And then once you understand that problem, you know how it is that you can then filter out, well, how do those problems manifest? And what do I need to explain at each stage throughout the chapter to assist the reader on their journey? So there's always a natural progression with that. And what I do is I simply map out the number of chapters. And so chapter 1, how does my story begin? Well, my story might begin with, what does the marketplace look like? What is the landscape? What's going on in the bigger picture periphery? Or it might be that chapter 1 is very much about what you're going to get out of this book. It's the introduction to beyond the introduction, it's the introduction. And I should say that, you know, in all of my books so far, and I say all of mine, you know, 2, and I'm writing 1 more, there's always a foreword, you know, because I like to put my own personality into the book and my reason, my purpose for writing the book and what I hope to achieve from it. Then there's a formal introduction to what you're going to get out of this book, how this book is structured, what each chapter is delivering for you, so that, you know, if they read those first bits, they get really excited about the fact that, yeah, this is the right book for me. I'm here. I'm at the right place. This is going to deliver the solutions I'm looking for, or I'm hoping it's going to deliver the solutions I'm looking for. So you have your foreword and you have your introduction, and then you dive into the chapters. And of course, your chapters will focus around whatever it is that you are teaching in the book. And so let's say the book has 8 chapters. So we have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7, and chapter 8. So I map out the aspects of what it is before I get to the number of my chapters, I map out the key aspects that I actually want to get to. What is it that I want to tell my audience about? What is it that I want to introduce them? And what are some of the challenges? So let's say they have issues about, you know, things that are stopping them engaging. Okay, well, I really need to cover, there's a number of things that are stopping them engaging. There might be 4 or 5, 6 or 7 different things that are stopping them engaging or stopping them doing, you know, moving forward in that particular place. What are they? And I'll map all of those things out. So I'll map it all out, like, well, what else do I need to educate them about? I want to educate them about the practicalities of doing it, okay? So I want to educate them about the systems. I want to educate them about the landscape. I want to educate them about what others are doing, you know, case studies, examples. And you map out what all of those things that you want to share look like, and you throw it all down, not in any particular way, just into chunks. I want to tell them this, I want to tell them that, I want to tell them this. And then you look at it and you keep looking at it. Now, a way I do this is I put things on post-it notes. and I write down all the ideas on post-it notes, and then I just start sticking those post-it notes all over a big space, a big white space, usually my wall in my office. Big space full of post-it notes. And then I start gathering those post-it notes into areas of commonality. You know, okay, that's about tech, that's about systems, that's about planning, that's about strategy, that's about tactics. And you start to move things around. So keep it nice and fluid, you know, so you can move things around. And then you naturally create clusters. Natural clusters appear from this exercise. And then when those clusters appear, what that is usually germinating is it's the seed for each of your chapters. And of course, what else that is useful for is things that don't fit into a chapter, you know, things that haven't naturally gone into a cluster. You know, it's a good sense check for saying, well, actually, is this a distraction? Do I take that out? Is it adding any major value? And if it is, do I need to build on it? And maybe I need chapter 9, you know, or another chapter in there to enable this to fit in. So, you know, the key is big idea, map out all the components, all the things that you think are valuable, all the stuff, get it down, write out all the little one-liners or ideas or bits of information that you definitely want to have in the book, and then get it all out on a wall. And what happens through this process is when you're looking at it, you're like, oh, hang on a minute, I haven't talked about that bit. Oh, so, you know, talk about writer's block. This is Planners Unleashed. You know, this is a great way of really looking at it, bigger picture, and thinking, that bit's missing, I need to add that bit in. It really is a useful tool. It's a process. I find it really, really useful for me. I'm quite visual, yet I'm quite practical. So I like to be able to see it all, and then I like to be able to move it all into specific areas. And those clusters become usually, and it's happened in 3 cases for me, and on a couple of cases where I've helped other people planning out their books, it's actually been you know, successful in helping me to determine those chapters. So once then you've got your chapters, of course, all these little post-it notes become really all the contents within each chapter as well. So you've got your chapter, and then you've got, well, actually, these are all the topics that chapter needs to cover. And what's the natural order for those to be covered in? You know, there's probably going to be some kind of progression. Similarly, as when you see all those clusters, there'll be a natural progression as to how you teach those chapters throughout the book. So it's a journey so that they fit together. And it's interesting that, you know, sometimes you get that bit wrong. And when you start writing all these little bits, it's kind of like, you know what, no. And then this is exactly what happened to me in Get Social. My chapter 1 and my chapter 2, I have ended up switching around because I felt that I needed to engage the reader from the get-go. I felt that I actually needed to make the book a bit more about the leader right from chapter 1 rather than talking about the landscape, which was originally chapter 1. So I've actually swapped those around. And for me, I feel that flows so much better for the reader. And, you know, so you may get these clusters and you may get your chapters set out, but nothing is set in stone until it's out there and published. Nothing is set in stone. This gives you a framework to follow, but there's always opportunity for you to be changing things around. And sometimes you don't know that until you actually get writing, because the one thing I would say is that when you are writing, you are not writing for yourself. And some books, you know, lots of people, particularly non-fiction books, fiction books and some non-fiction books are very cathartic. You know, this is all about, you know, writing for themselves about this is what happened to me. And I'm sure there is that aspect there. But it's always, from my perspective, about the reader, about your audience. about engaging them, because I don't know about you, but how many books have you got that are on your shelves and you've never read them? Or you picked them up and you started them and you've never read it. So if that's you, send me some likes, because I'm sending lots of likes, because that is definitely me. I pick up books, and if it doesn't really engage me in the first chapter, I kind of think, oh, I'll come back to that. You know, I need to know that I'm at the right place when I pick up a book, and that book is going to resonate with me, and I'm going to get out of it what I want to get out of it. Now, that doesn't always happen with non-fiction books, and you know, I kind of set myself a task with novels that if I pick it up and I'm reading it, unless I'm really, really in pain reading this book, then I'm going to stick with it, you know, because often they get better and get better and get better as you get into the story. With non-fiction books, where it's about usually learning something or guiding you or helping you in some way, then you really need to be engaged. You need to know that you're spending time in a place with a resource that is going to, you know, give you that enlightenment, help you in the way that you're looking for. So, you know, from that perspective, depending on which type of book you're writing, keep the audience in mind. It's not all about you. Then, once you've got your chapters in those clusters have made sense, then you're able to map out with the rest of your post-it notes all the other components, and again, order them in a way that enables you to give a nice order to that particular chapter, and it just starts to fall into place. So I suppose the other thing I always like to do is I like at the beginning of every chapter, and you'll find this in all of my books, and you'll find it in a lot of other books, you know, it's not like I've created this winning formula, but I particularly like it in other books, so it's something that I've brought to my books, is what you're going to get out of this chapter. You know, what this chapter is setting out to achieve, and then at the end of each chapter, okay, so things you should remember from this chapter, and things I want you to do right now, things I want you to do to take action from this particular chapter. Because sometimes you know, you're reading a book and you think, that was brilliant, that was brilliant, that was brilliant, and I always have a pen, and I'm always labeling, and I'm always highlighting and scribbling in margins, but sometimes I don't take action. And that accountability aspect is something we'll talk about. You know, we'll talk about accountability in writing a book in a couple of weeks. But for now, that aspect is a really important. That, you know, for me, I find that really important. So if you know, when you're going through the process and you have got your chapters down and you've mapped out what's going to go into those chapters, think about those intros, think about those outros, think about again what you want your audience to do, what you want them to take away from each chapter. You know, particularly in my position, it's actually helping me because I'm building a plan that culminates in one of the final chapters. So this component of asking people to do stuff as they're going through the book makes actual sense. So again, it might be part of a theme, it may not. Again, it's something for you to think about. I think we've got a question here. Okay, so how long does it take to write a book from start to finish? Is there a usual time frame? Oh, great question. My gosh. Well, all I would say to that is it always takes longer than you thought it was going to take. And that's happened in, you know, for me personally, maybe, you know, we're going to talk about committing to time, we're going to talk about accountability. But for me personally, I would say, it's interesting, I had this same conversation with my daughter over the weekend. She was telling me that she'd been to see a children's author, Cathy Cassidy, and Cathy Cassidy had written her book in 3 months, Mummy, you know, and you're still writing at weekends, and it's been since May, you know, this is 6-7 months, Mummy, what's going on? And of course, the difference between me and Cathy Cassidy is that she is probably a full-time author. Well, I think she is, and that's all she does. That's all she does. So, you know, if I had every day to write, even 5 days a week, from 9 in the morning till 5 or 6 in the evening, 8 hours of writing a day, what a luxury. And for most of us, or for many of us, unless we are full-time authors, we're practitioners, and therefore we are fitting the writing around what it is that we do, around our lives. So, you know, how long does it take? I mean, I had a deadline, I'm past that deadline, 2 other authors that had deadlines are past their deadlines. You know, deadlines aren't there to be broken, but unfortunately life gets in the way, and there are disasters and there are things that happen, and you've got to stay strong and tenacious and keep going and keep going and keep going. So it's a difficult question to answer. You know, I wouldn't like to answer that. I'd probably say around 6 months is if you're Kathy Cassidy, you can get it smashed out in 2 months of dedicated time. You know, I know other authors that have written books and have dedicated to doing 1,000 words a day, and you know, so it's taken them 70 days. But it's, you know, and I could say the same about me, but I've not had a whole day to often write, and sometimes it isn't as simple as just getting the words down. You've got to do research. There are complexities in creating models. There is research that needs to happen as you're writing, particularly in the social media space where things are changing, or you need to check out the latest stats, etc. So things change all the time, and I think it's a difficult question to answer, to be specific, but I'd say around 6 months. If it's not what you do all the time, and you are prepared to give up your evenings, your weekends, your holidays, and use that time for fitting in writing and researching and finessing, because once it's down, it isn't down. It needs to be edited, it needs to be finessed, it needs to be reworked. You know, there's a lot that goes into a book. So I think we're going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Hey, Elizabeth, mwah! Great to see you on here. Really great to see you on here. Sending big hearts to you. So yeah, wonderful to be writing a book, and it's definitely worthwhile. I give it the big thumbs up. I'm so proud that I've managed to write a book, and I am super proud that I'm writing another book, and no doubt there'll be more. You know, no doubt there'll be more. I say no, but I'm sure I probably will. I've got another couple of ideas in my head, and they probably won't go away. So the next few teachers, I'm going to break this down. So we've talked about the structure, the planning, the big idea, the focusing on your audience, how you can use those post-it notes on a big wall, build them into clusters to create organic chapters, use those post-it notes then to mark out all the different components that go into those chapters, thinking about your intro, thinking about action points for people to be doing throughout the book, so that they really have that accountability with the book, and it's being useful and purposeful for them, so you're being useful and purposeful for them if that's relevant to your book. And so that's that aspect. Next week we're going to talk about the time. So it's interesting that, you know, the time question came up. There's another couple of questions there about the time it takes and how do you fit that time in. I'm going to share that with you in next Tuesday's Tuesday Teach, okay? I'm not perfect, I am far from perfect, but I'm going to share with you my methodology for making that time, and how, you know, you know, the blood, sweat and tears are required to just stick to your guns and commit to that time. But you've got to make that time. You've got to make that time. That time doesn't just happen, and that is something we're going to talk about next Tuesday. So thank you very much for tuning in. Wonderful to have you here. Thank you for being part of the Made Simple community. Yes, where startups support startups. If you've got any questions following this in the, you know, if you watch it in the catch up, then ask away, because those questions make our lives simpler in helping you. So the more we know, the more we can help you. So ask questions. And this will also go over into the Made Simple main page in the next couple of days. So we keep it for you guys first, and then we'll take just one of the teachers over of this session into the Made Simple group. So if you can share it for us, that would be fantastic, because the more people that can get involved with the Made Simple community and learn about what we're doing and how we're helping those our community as much as we can, and how our community is helping one another as much as they can, the better. So yeah, so if you enjoy these sessions, then do share them. But we don't always put our private teaching over into the main page. We'll do one of these teachers, but then if people aren't in the community, they're not going to get to see the rest of what's coming. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Great to have you all on board, and look forward to next Tuesday, where we have our next Tuesday teach. Happy writing, or happy thinking about that big idea. Okay, take care. Bye.